tell yourself something you really want to be true? Like, I am sticking with the workout this time. I am finishing this game before I start another one. I am going to put out a video every single week. Well, the people making our games have gotten really good at it too. Like Insomniac saying internet memes and criticism surrounding Wolverine have been a relentless onslaught. Bethesda protestors saying Bethesda makes great games people love, or laid off Halo devs stating Halo Campaign Evolved had a successful launch. If the last decade has taught us anything, it is that there is an increasingly bizarre disconnect between so many of these AAA studios and the people buying their games, between executives and their own studios, between journalists and players, between what the industry says is true and what is very obviously actual reality. Because while we are getting LinkedIn post after LinkedIn post about layoffs, even from people who just shipped a self-proclaimed successful game, I'm also watching players post celebrations about those same layoffs, some of them with millions of views. Gamers have spent years feeling like they were yelling at a wall, watching their hobby get more expensive in every way, watching their favorite franchises get worse, watching quality continue to drop, while everyone inside these companies kept insisting things were going great. And at the same time, Western AAA has spent years getting insulated from reality, from its customers, from any real criticism, and eventually from its own failures. And while 2026 may be the year of the horse for China, it is the year of the chud for gamers, and more importantly, it is the year the market has finally stopped letting everybody play pretend. But before we get into all of that, it is really great to be back. I hope you've been having a great summer. I know I disappeared again. I am so sorry. There were some side quests I had to go take care of, and as penance, please accept this picture of my dogs. But a lot has happened over the past month, so let's do a super quick catch-up first. GTA 6 is coming to Netflix. The extended preview of the game, that is. I'll be honest, I didn't even realize we could reach this level of advertising, and it means that there are people out there right now paying for a subscription specifically to watch a GTA 6 ad. Yeah, well, but we also got more info on Kingdom Hearts 4, including its launch window of late 2027. I'm pretty excited for this, I won't lie. I had a lot of the Kingdom Hearts games on my old PlayStation consoles, but I have since sold them all. So I did the only reasonable thing, and I just bought the main trilogy on Steam, which is only like $30 for all three right now. I'm actually pretty excited to play all of them again, including Kingdom Hearts 3, which, you know what they say, God gives his toughest battles to his strongest warriors. Swords and Slippers and Knight's Path are back on my timeline, with one of the female characters being described as horny. And if you guessed it was the fully clothed medieval maiden with a little bit of cleavage standing there with her cat, you would be correct. Now, I don't think either of these characters could be described as horny, whatever that means, but these devs do know exactly who they are building for, and they are not interested in being bullied into building for anything else. The war on pretty female characters rages on, so thank you to the devs fighting the good fight. Speaking of which, we got more Tides of Annihilation. The combat in this game continues to look really fun. Gwendolyn is looking a little bit different this time around, but still absolutely stunning. And now there is some speculation that Angela Sandobuono may be stepping in for Jennifer English as her new voice actress, which, if that ends up being true, that'll do, pig. That'll do. Unfortunately, not every upcoming game has been having quite the same effect, which brings us to Wolverine. So for weeks now, we've been getting more and more Wolverine content as the game gets closer to release, and I'll be honest, this was never really a game for me. Alright, and the more that I have seen of it, the less interested I have become. It appears some of the internet may feel that way too now, and Insomniac has gone on the record about it. Their community and marketing director posted this, saying, I think the wild way this algorithm amplifies and forces negativity upon you has me reconsidering my philosophy of telling devs to look or post here. It is a relentless onslaught that I cannot believe is good for anyone's mental health, nor representative. A relentless onslaught. It's a really intense word to use, so I went and looked for this onslaught, braced myself a little, and it's Ben 10. People are making jokes about this game, reminding them of Ben 10, and that a chase sequence leaves a little red streak behind Sabretooth when he runs, so the modern audience doesn't get lost, and overall just a fair amount of memes about how they don't think this game looks very good. And then the rest of it, the part that isn't memes, is just people having opinions about the game itself. Really unappealing character designs, which Insomniac seems to take genuine pride in, the cheesy dialogue, the fact that what has been shown off looks like the same generic Sony movie game formula that we've been handed for the better part of a decade, gameplay and boss fights that have been done for years, and of course, sweet baby ink being involved, which at this point, most people can probably spot from space. None of that is an onslaught. That is just a reaction to marketing for a product you were getting ready to release to the public. But like clockwork, the journalists have shown up to defend the game from the evil chud discourse, claiming that this game is yet another victim of the internet's endless gaming negativity. A victim? A $70 game with a multi-million-dollar budget backed by Sony is a victim because people looked at what has been shown off and they have not been impressed. That is the framing that we are now going with, not, hey, I don't know, here's why we think you'll love this game. No, the game is a victim, and you're kind of a jerk actually if you're not gushing with excitement, ready to hand over your hard-earned cash. What's even crazier though is that this is Wolverine, one of the most beloved characters in comics, and getting the opportunity to work on a Marvel game like this should be a massive privilege. You have the opportunity to work with one of the most recognizable characters on the entire planet. 50-something years of comics, the movies, the cartoons, whole generations of people who have grown up with this character. But just like with Spider-Man, if you do him a disservice, of course, people are going to notice. If he suspiciously looks like a kinder version of that kid from Jumanji for some reason, people are going to notice. But even with that being said, the bar for this game was never to go do something impossible. If Insomniac just had their head on straight, the bar was supposed to be go do the thing you already know how to do. I really loved the 2018 Spider-Man, and I thought they did a great job with that game, but they have just not been able to get back there. Either way, gamers are not here to protect a studio's feelings. We are the customer, and it is their job to sell us the game. People making jokes and criticizing creative decisions is not harassment, and what is so funny to me is how fast the blame comes and how familiar it all feels every single time. We saw it with Assassin's Creed Shadows, which said it was a battle that they fought and won. There was the Highguard dev who deleted his statements and his account twice, and now it is Insomniac with Wolverine. It is the same 3 steps every single time. The game gets shown off, or in Highguard's case, gets blasted to the heavens by Jeff Keighley. People say what they think about it, sometimes very bluntly because it is the internet, and then instead of anybody in the studio going, that is an awful lot of people saying the same specific thing, the response that comes back is that the audience is the worst. The audience is attacking us, the gamers are bullies, it is all a coordinated attack, and they are always the victims, which, if we just look at the balance of power in this specific situation, on one side you have got Sony, a billion-dollar publishing arm, 50 years of Marvel, and the games press writing your defense before the game is even out. On the other side, a guy who made a Ben 10 joke. But yes, it is gamers that are the Avengers-level threat. But speaking of assembling, let's talk about Halo and how somehow they managed to make every possible mistake a Western AAA studio could make. Now, I was never a huge Halo person. I knew what it was, obviously, but it was never my thing. It was my older brother's thing, and it was my husband's thing before I ever knew him. The whole LAN party era, I was a bit too young and much more interested in playing Zelda to care about any of that. But Halo is one of the most recognizable IPs in all of gaming. I would honestly argue it is Star Wars tier, and even if you've never played it, it is the game that your friend's older brother had, and it is the reason an entire generation of people know what a warthog is. So, watching what has happened to it after all these years is genuinely very sad to see. Halo Studios, which was 343 Industries for most of this, has been making Halo for almost 19 years. Almost 2 decades of one studio basically doing one thing, which is what makes the reporting on Campaign Evolved so hard for me to wrap my head around. An article came out recently detailing an allegedly pretty rough development cycle, things like not even realizing that assets would clearly need to be rebuilt for this remake, building in abstraction for technical work and level design across the campaign, which then reportedly fell apart. And again, this is a game that has been around for 25 years, and the studio that has spent 19 years doing nothing but trying to make Halo good again, and failing, hired another studio to design Halo levels. And underneath all of it, the studio head reportedly promoted people into leadership roles they were not even equipped for, leading to even more awful mismanagement. And then what happened when the game came out and actually reached players? Low numbers across Steam and PlayStation, mixed Steam reviews sitting in the low 60s, a 5.2 user score, the lowest launch player count in the series history, and complaints about basically everything. The new missions, the cringy dialogue, the insufferable masculine girl boss, the account requirements, the enemy AI, bugs, no multiplayer, even the AI angel herself, Cortana. They germ at her. It is like somebody printed out the entire list of things that you are not supposed to do to a beloved franchise or, just to a game in general, and then ran it start to finish without skipping a single one. And the parts that Halo Studios actually added themselves, the pieces that were uniquely theirs, the new missions, ended up being some of the most criticized things in the whole release. What is so crazy to me is that this should have been the safest assignment imaginable. This story already exists, the characters already exist, the levels exist, the game already worked and was extremely beloved by an enormous amount of people. You are remaking Halo, and it still turned into a case study of mismanagement, creative disconnect, lack of skill, followed a week or two after launch by layoffs, which we didn't even find out about through corporate announcement, by the way. We found out because people started posting it on LinkedIn. One of the devs wrote that after 6.5 years on Halo and dodging just as many rounds of layoffs, it had finally caught up with him. Another dev wrote that his time there ended following the successful launch of the latest game. Successful. Right. And while it is hard to grasp, I do think that there is a real chance that these people believe the things that they are saying. Probably because this is the language that was being used around them the entire time. That is the only feedback they got. That is what was shared in the company meetings. That was what everybody in the building had already agreed upon that the launch would look like. But if your definition of success can include the lowest launch player count in Halo history, a 5.2 user score at best, mixed reviews, and layoffs 2 weeks later, I don't know what to say. I did not have high expectations for Ubisoft's Black Flag remake, and even they still ended up performing so much better than this game. And a not so fun fact to close this section out, both studios that have ever touched this franchise, Bungie and Halo Studios, had layoffs 6 weeks apart, all during Halo's 25th anniversary year, which is a pretty bleak way to celebrate a legacy. And speaking of bleak celebrations, let's go to a parking lot in Rockville, Maryland. After all the layoffs and the protests that took place last month, I honestly thought that we would get a little quiet out of Bethesda. We did not. Because on August 11th, Xbox leadership came out to visit Bethesda Game Studios, and Asha Sharma was there to see the current build of Elder Scrolls 6. The Bethesda workers there knew that she was coming, so to welcome her, the protesters put up posters outside of their cubicles, which management then told them they had to take down, or at least flip around. So the employees then switched to balloons, which is a weird escalation. Somebody sat there and thought about it and went, fine, they can take our posters. They are not taking our balloons. And then outside in the grass in front of the building, they planted 800 red flags, one for every worker that has been laid off since July of last year, and they brought out Scabby, who is a giant inflatable union rat that I did not even know existed until this happened. So Asha shows up to all of this, goes inside, looks at the game, and tweets out that the scale and grandeur of Elder Scrolls 6 are incredible. And she is right. That is a lot of grandeur. To which the Bethesda brand account replied, thanking her for the kind words and the wonderful visit. So the brand account is on X doing hospitality, while the staff is on the lawn with a rat. Bethesda, if you can hear me, you've got to wrangle in your union guys, because they are just having the opposite effect of what you probably want. Every time I see them pop up in headlines, I already know that they have just done something that is going to be completely dismissed by gamers, and more importantly, by Daddy Microsoft. But it is not just Bethesda. Since 2022, there have been over 45,000 layoffs in the gaming industry. The projection for this year alone is over 14,000, and you can look at a number like that on top of everything else that everyone's been hit with for the past few years and go, all right, that's it. Gaming is dying. Except when you add all of them together, you see reportedly that 95% of those layoffs are happening in the West, with the majority of them in North America. Now, of course, overhiring and mismanagement is real. Corporate greed is very real. Unfortunately, I am sure very talented people have been swept up in these layoffs over the years, and there is a lack of job security in America. All of those things are playing a part here, but at what point can we also all be honest and say, maybe the hiring practices we put into place and bragged about for the past 5 or 6 years have had a directly negative impact on the games we've been making? Maybe building teams around the EI targets, ESG goals, ideological fit, social politics, or really anything other than who is actually the best person for the job, who understands what it is we're making, and who genuinely wants to be here is contributing to the unsuccessful launches and cycles of layoffs. It is no secret that there is this environment of toxic HR positivity especially inside Western AAA, and a lot of it comes from the top down. You are completely surrounded by it. I mean, if you were working at Bethesda, you can quite literally be standing next to a guy with an actual communist tattoo on his neck. And I am not saying that to attack him personally. I bring it up because it tells you something about the kind of ideological environment we are talking about here. What do you think the priorities are when that team is hiring? What does internal feedback even look like in an environment like that? Something like, "Comrade, respectfully, your quest is buns." I am joking, obviously. We all know that there is no real feedback happening inside these companies, which makes me wonder what these companies are really taking away from any of this discourse. Because at the exact same time we are seeing Wolverine, Halo, and Bethesda flounder and lose their audience support, we are watching smaller studios and independent developers put out games that reach absolutely ridiculous levels of success, games that in some cases are putting productions with hundreds of millions of dollars behind them to shame. And it is not because those developers necessarily had it easy. Pocket Bear has dealt with enormous public pressure, harassment, and an entire population of Pokemon zealots preying on their downfall. Both Larian and Clear Obscure got dragged into witch hunts over AI. These studios have dealt with criticism, controversy, and accusations, but did they turn around and start fighting with their own audience base? Did we get corporate statements about the onslaught of opinions and memes and what it was doing to everybody's mental health? No. Now, again, I am not trying to make all of this sound like doom and gloom, because despite everything I have just spent this entire video saying, I really do think we are just starting to see a correction that was probably always going to come. This current version of Western AAA has survived for way too long. These companies have had decades of customer goodwill behind them, enormous franchises that people were emotionally attached to, and enough money in the bank to insulate themselves from bad decisions for years and years. They could lose people, disappoint people, release something mediocre, promise that the next one would be better, and there was always enough goodwill left over to keep the machine moving, but things are finally correcting. The year of the Chud is bringing us more and more into balance with every passing day. To be honest, Bethesda is really what inspired this entire video in the first place, all because of one protester shocked by the layoffs saying, "I have been told Bethesda makes great games people love." And that line has stuck with me for weeks now because I don't necessarily think that person was lying. I think the sadder possibility is that they meant it completely. Because if everyone around you says you're doing great, and that the game you're working on is great, and the journalists tell you is important, and the consultants tell you that it's inclusive, the internal metrics say engagement is promising, the awards show tell you that what you're doing is brave, eventually the only person left telling you something is very wrong is your customer. And eventually, if those customers continue to be the only people telling you something is wrong, you start to see them as the enemy. You can call something a successful launch. You can describe memes and gaming opinions as an onslaught that is terrible for your mental health. You can insist people still love your games, even when you haven't actually given them a game that they've asked for in over a decade. Even if all of those things feel completely true inside the room where you're saying them, it does not make them true in reality. It does not make them true in player reviews, it does not make them true in player counts or copies sold, and it does not make them true in the discourse in social media. All of those things will always be based in reality, and it is about time some of these studios finally join us there. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for being here. I would love to know what you think about all of this. And what I said at the beginning is true, by the way. I really am trying to be more consistent with uploads, and I really appreciate your patience because I know I have been coming and going. I never want to be someone who is yapping for the sake of yapping, you know? There should always be some kind of purpose behind the yap, and sometimes that means I sit on something probably longer than I should because I'm still figuring out what I want to say, but I am working on it, I promise. And as always, you guys are the main characters here. I am just so grateful to be your background NPC. So thank you again, and I'll see you in the next one.